Up next on The Reveal. A hidden danger of war.
He felt like he fought the war twice, and this time it got him.
The enemy, a rare cancer.
It's hard to catch this at a point where it's curable.
How other veterans may be at risk. It was supposed to be paradise, the perfect getaway.
He was next to the bed, standing over me. His hands are in my pants.
She was sexually assaulted, and it's not an isolated incident. And preserving history.
And then I started looking around, and then there's depressions everywhere. And I thought, well, what's going on here?
A discovery lost through time.
This site is not maintained.
The Reveal begins now with investigators Faith Abube and Brendan Keefe.
Welcome to The Reveal, an investigative show where news is made.
Did a war veteran eat something in Vietnam that ended up killing him some 4 decades later? His family thinks so and are questioning why other veterans aren't being warned that they too could be at risk.
I'm shaking like a leaf, but I really needed to do this for him.
Roxanne Peterson just lost her husband of 44 years.
And I lost him because I believe there's information out there that wasn't shared with us.
Army veteran Stephen Peterson, Pete to his friends, planned to tell this story himself. He didn't make it to our interview.
Date of death, November 11, 2018. He felt like he fought the war twice, and this time it got him.
The war, Pete's war, was Vietnam.
Served 3 tours there.
He came home with mental scars, damaged hearing, and jungle rot on his feet. What he didn't know is he was also likely carrying a microscopic hitchhiker that 46 years later is suspected of being his killer.
If you think about it, he was a ticking time bomb.
Pete developed cholangiocarcinoma, bile duct cancer.
Highly lethal.
Dr. John Larson with Minnesota Oncology says cholangiocarcinoma is uncommon in the U.S. There are only about 8,000 cases diagnosed here each year. Rare and deadly.
It's hard to catch this at a point where it's curable.
Pete was already stage 4 when first diagnosed. He survived just 14 months.
It's a diagnosis and then it's a death sentence.
Lisa Saller wanted answers about her dad's rare cancer.
Googled Vietnam vets and cholangiocarcinoma.
What she discovered is a growing social media community of Vietnam vets and their loved ones who believe their cholangiocarcinoma is tied to their service, caused by consuming a tiny parasite called a liver fluke, common in fish in the waters of Southeast Asia.
So it's endemic there, right?
Dr. Larson says the liver fluke parasites attach to the lining of a person's bile duct and can live undetected for decades, causing inflammation and scarring, eventually leading to cancer.
For the most part, when they do get the cancers, those who do, it's later on, decades later, not usually just right after exposure.
Despite 3 tours serving in a place where the parasites are a known hazard, Pete's family says he was never warned by the Army or the VA that he was at risk.
Why wasn't our vets notified of this?
If you know where to look on the VA website, there is a warning about the liver flukes, stating Vietnam veterans who ate raw or undercooked fish might have been infected. How many veterans does this impact? A 2017 VA pilot study found it could be as high as 1 in 4. With this information, Pete filed for VA benefits.
Sir, what happened?
Denied.
That's not uncommon. The Associated Press found veterans filing benefits claims for bile duct cancer has increased 6-fold since 2003, but nearly 80% are denied. In an email to Care 11, the VA calls their own liver fluke study flawed. There are other causes for the rare cancer, and the VA maintains there's no research showing cholangiocarcinoma is more common in Vietnam veterans than in the rest of the population.
Not enough evidence.
Some veterans wonder whether it's like Agent Orange, which took the government years to acknowledge was causing their cancer. Lisa helped her dad appeal his denial. 2 of his private doctors wrote letters to the VA stating because of his time in Vietnam, more likely than not, he developed cancer because of his exposure to liver flukes.
Why is it so hard today?
Pete died before his appeal was heard, but his family is continuing the fight.
Well, Dad, we're doing this for you.
And sharing the story Pete now cannot, in hopes of raising awareness of a risk they wish they'd been warned about.
And we miss him. We miss him a lot.
Our investigator, AJ Legault, has been covering veterans' health issues for several years, and this latest report has generated a big response on social media. AJ joins us now with a follow-up.
A New York congressman has introduced a bill directing the VA to study and report to Congress on the prevalence of bile duct cancer in Vietnam veterans. The VA tells me they've already begun to do that, but it's going to be 1.5 to 2 years before data analysis will be complete. For The Reveal, I'm AJ Legault.
Coming up on The Reveal, are you planning that spring getaway?
And he starts, touching me again. And I'm like, no.
Why safety warnings have been issued to American tourists at some popular vacation spots.
Had I been armed with the information then, the outcome would have been different.
If you have a news tip or a comment on one of our investigations, email us at thereveal@11alive.com.
Welcome back to The Reveal. We're heading into a busy vacation season, but a grim warning by the U.S. State Department might have you thinking twice about some of the most popular vacation spots. The federal government says dozens of American tourists have been sexually assaulted at some locations. Here's what we found. These are the pictures of paradise vacation resorts want you to see. The warm Caribbean sun reflecting off white sandy beaches and beautiful tropical drinks by a pristine pool.
We're in the Bahamas. It's truly paradise.
It was that promise of paradise that made Ashley and Jeffrey Pascarella decide to bring their wedding to the Sandals Resort in the Bahamas.
It's really just one of the most memorable trips of our lives up until the night of our welcome party.
After their welcome party, a butler assigned to them brought water and snacks to their room.
So I told him, I got to get ready. I got to jump in the shower, so, we got to go. So he gets up, he follows me, I go into the bathroom, and he leaves.
But the couple says the butler sneaked back into the room and headed straight for the bed where Ashley was sleeping.
He was next to the bed, standing over me. His hands are in my pants.
God, I had my whole vacation left. I just got there.
Farther south at another resort, Metro Atlanta woman Ivy Lee says she was also sexually assaulted. A vendor on the beach at the Sunscape Resort in Montego Bay, Jamaica, had offered to teach her to swim.
He's saying, relax. And he starts, touching me again.
Where was he touching you?
And I'm like, no. This is not what I want. He's still touching me. And then I realize that, I'm in trouble.
Since 2011, 78 American tourists have told the U.S. Embassy in Jamaica they were raped or sexually assaulted while on vacation. And for years now, the State Department has warned Americans about sexual assaults perpetrated by hotel employees at resort hotels. Jamaica and the Bahamas, where Ashley and Ivy were both assaulted, are both flagged as critical threat locations.
Had I been armed with the information then, the outcome would have been different. But I didn't know that then.
It's depressing to know how many other people have gone through this and how it has really affected their lives.
Fighting for justice in a foreign country can be daunting. But what's worse, both Ivy and the Pascarellas say, after the assaults, getting help from police or the resorts was another problem.
They just felt very dismissive that we kept asking them, where are the police? Why is it taking so long? Like we said, we didn't see any police until the next day or later that morning.
They didn't offer any help. They didn't offer to call police, and in fact, you had to do it twice.
Right, and they still never were called. They were still never called because no police ever came.
The resort sent us a statement saying Ivy declined to go to the police station. But Ivy says that was the next day when she decided it was best to drop her case.
I feel like it's an organized effort to shut you down. I feel like it's an organized effort to keep you quiet. He said then the guy would sit in jail until the court date. Then I would return, but I would have to return at my own expense. I knew I was never coming back, ever.
Do you ever fear that he would continue doing it again?
I do. I do.
The Pasquarellas were persistent. Their butler was eventually arrested. He pleaded guilty to indecent assault. The Sandals resort where the Pasquarellas stayed released a statement saying in part, "We take criminal allegations of violence seriously, report such allegations to law enforcement, and fully cooperate with law enforcement's investigation." And in Ivy's case, Sunscapes Resort says, "This is an unfortunate incident and not reflective of the experiences of most visitors to Jamaica."
So Faith, what should people do if they face a similar situation while they're on vacation?
So U.S. officials want you to report any crime to the resort and local police no matter what obstacles you end up facing. It's also important for you to reach out to the embassy. They know that country and can help you navigate the judicial system.
Up next on The Reveal.
This is sacred ground. We want to honor our heritage.
A fight to preserve a piece of history.
Our investigation revealed the gap in state law that put domestic violence victims at risk.
He shattered my right femur. I have a shot that mangled my right lung.
Then when lawmakers vowed to fix it, we put their proposed legislation to the test.
There are not a lot of people who are going to take the time to do these kinds of stories about hard, tough issues that face people every single day.
The Reveal, immersive reporting that prompts change.
He was out for his routine walk through the woods.
But this time, he stumbled onto something that would consume the next 15 years of his life.
We'd go over there and hike on my lunch hours, just wander, as I call it. And probably a year, I wandered all over the place.
Jim Koenig believes a higher purpose brought him to these woods in Leesburg, Virginia.
Then I happened to see this headstone, which was actually tilted, but I could recognize it as a headstone, and I thought, well, why would somebody be buried down here? So I came up and looked at the headstone and saw the name and all, and then I started looking around, and then there's depressions everywhere. And I thought, well, what's going on here? Is this a graveyard?
Drawn to the mysterious graveyard, Koenig returned over and over, marking every grave with a wooden post and flag. That was 15 years ago. He was intrigued and wanted to know who these people were. He researched the name on the one marked gravestone and learned Chester Sidwell was African American and that this was a forgotten African American cemetery. Then, as Koenig began clearing debris from the graves, he made another amazing discovery. He found these, 2 gravesite markers that were left by the funeral home. They are 2 pieces of paper with names that were inside metal containers. What you must have thought, this is incredible.
Well, yeah. Because to have paper survive that long out in the elements like this.
Using those 3 names, Koenig pored over census records going back as far as 1860, the year before the Civil War started. Even though some of the people buried here were alive in 1860, they weren't listed in the census because they were slaves and considered property, not people. But Koenig found them in the 1870 census after the Civil War, when slaves had gained their freedom.
But it shows their resilience. So one day they're a slave, they're emancipated the next day, they really have no training, they have nothing, no education, no money, no nothing, no land. And they turn around and literally within 10 years, they actually have established the beginnings of a community. They are prospering. Their kids are learning how to read. They set up their own schools.
They acquired land, built houses, and even a school. We're told they were all in this field, close to this church on Sycolin Road, the only remaining structure from the community. The cemetery has come to be known as the Sycolin Cemetery.
I call them my people. They're obviously not my people, but
You feel a connection with
oh
them.
yeah.
Why is that?
I know their families intimately. I research these families. I follow their births, deaths.
He's identified a family plot where a baby was buried. He found this photo of 13-year-old Paul Franklin Johnson and a eulogy written when he died in 1947. His son, also named Paul Johnson, is 86 years old and still lives in Leesburg.
I have a grandmother buried there, father buried there.
Johnson is concerned about his father's and grandmother's final resting place. Jim Koenig identified 42 graves here, but believes there could be many more. He thinks this is the largest traditional African-American cemetery found undisturbed and intact. Koenig's discovery helped stop the town from putting a road through the land. But the cemetery has not been well maintained. While the town has tried to protect the grave sites with fencing, drainage is a huge problem as water pools in the grave sites.
You see this headstone? This site is not maintained.
Pastor Michelle Thomas is the executive director of the Loudon Freedom Center, a nonprofit that cares for 2 other African-American cemeteries in the county.
Speak through us, oh God.
This is sacred ground. We want to honor our heritage. We want to honor those persons that were a part of our society that contributed so much, that didn't have a voice in their lifetime.
For the past 4 years, Thomas has been trying to get the town of Leesburg to give the cemetery to the Freedom Center so they can take care of it. No one knows what the property is worth because the town has not done an appraisal. But it does sit across from the Leesburg Airport and is in the airport's buffer zone, so nothing can be built on it. Last month, Leesburg Mayor Kelly Burke explained why the town would not give the land to the Freedom Center.
What's wrong with that idea? Well, there's nothing wrong with that idea, but it's a little more complicated because of the connection with the FAA.
Turns out it wasn't that complicated after all. After we started asking questions, the Leesburg Town Council reversed course and finally agreed to give the land to the Freedom Center.
4 years. 4 years. 4 daunting years of a horrible fight. It's overwhelming, but we won. That's the big deal. Hey, thank you, but thank you, camera. I sure appreciate it.
Hey, all right. Pastor Thomas and Jim Koenig envision a beautiful, sacred place with interpretive signs that tell an American story, a story that's often been forgotten.
It's an important statement that every American must understand, that Black history is American history, and it requires all of our help, white and Black, to save it.
If you have a news tip or a comment on one of our investigations, email us at thereveal@11alive.com.
Next week on The Reveal. Claims of unreported abuse and sexual misconduct against a state agency responsible for rehabilitating children.
How are we rehabilitating children while we're abusing them?
Like he's not a human, like he's just a freaking animal or something.
It wasn't taking me seriously. They were throwing away my write-ups.
The officers will talk openly about these relationships.
It's that blatant.
It's that blatant.
Let's talk. We confront the agency's commissioner about the claims. Are you aware of any incidents that are not being reported at your facilities? Next week on The Reveal.
You've been watching The Reveal, a show dedicated to impact investigations.
And we'll see you next week for The Reveal, a show where news is made.